Hi, today I'm going to read a book by Ann Turner. It's called Nettie's Trip South. It is a historical book. It is about the time of slavery. It's before the Civil War, before the United States and the North and South were fighting over slavery. And it's about the perspective of a little girl from the North who goes to visit the South before the war. Nettie's Trip South. Dear Addie, you said, tell me about your trip south. Tell me everything. If we sat in our apple tree and I told you all, we would be there till the sunset. But these are the things I remember most. And though I'm only 10, I saw the slaves. I saw the South. Mother and Father waved goodbye. The buggy creaked. I in my new furs, too excited to cry. And Sister Julia, grown up at 14. Brother Lockwood shouted directions and orders, excited to be on his first newspaper story. Father said, go, all of you. War may be coming soon, and this is your chance to see the South. So this family, the older son is a newspaper reporter, and he's going to the South to get a story. The country is not at war yet, but you can tell that they're considering that will happen soon. So this family is letting the two daughters go with their son to see what the South is really like. I admit I jumped. I admit I screamed a little when the train chuffed and puffed and hooted into the station. My first train ride ever. Lockwood sat back and pretended to be calm. But Julia and I bounced and twittered until our lace collars scratched at our necks. Addie, I was so worried I was almost sick. Julia told me slaves are thought to be 3/5 of a person. So a whole person would be 5/5, because 5/5 is a whole. But slaves are considered to only be 3/5 of a person. It's in the Constitution. I'd never seen a slave and wondered, what were they missing? Was it an arm, a leg, a foot, or something inside? I couldn't ask Lockwood. He had such a sharp tongue. That means he might think she was silly for asking. And Julia was busy being very grown up, so I kept my worry to myself. All the way south in the train, across Chesapeake Bay, I looked and looked at black people, but I could not see what they were missing. I stayed in my first hotel in Richmond. I asked our black maid, are you a slave? She nodded and said, Tabitha's my name. Don't have no other. Like a cat or a dog, Addie, with just one name. I looked and looked, but she had a nose, 2 eyes, a mouth, 2 arms, and though I could not see her legs, I saw her feet under her skirts. I sighed, then Tabitha opened the windows, and a sweeter cedar smell rushed in. I sniffed and she said, that's the smell of the South, Missy. So she's still wondering what parts are missing, isn't she? Next day, Brother took us on a buggy ride to a near plantation. A plantation would be like a huge farm. Trees were like old men with tattered gray coats, and the sun pressed down on our heads. Sister Julia was thirsty and asked a boy for water. His face was so black and round and fierce, it could have been fired from a cannon in war. I saw where he got the water. There was a shack run down with heaps of rags in the corner, I think for beds, and a grandfather with his legs every which way lying on the rags. Everyone smiled and nodded, except me. Some animals live better, Addie. So she's not too impressed with the conditions they're living in, is she? She says some animals live better than that. The cedars didn't smell so sweet that night, and the smell got in my nose as Brother walked and talked all the way. On Saturday, we went to town and stopped on a street by a green gate. A red flag outside said, Negro auction today. I didn't want to go, Addie, but Brother said he had to see it. for his story. He pulled us in and sat us down. There was a platform. It's like a stage. There was a fat man in a tight white suit. There was a black woman on the platform. "Jump, Aunt, jump!" the man shouted. Someone called out a price, and she was gone. Gone, Addie, like a sack of flour pushed across a store counter. There was a man with a face like an oak in our yard, all twisted, and he ran and jumped and was sold. And 2 children our age clasped hands, and they were bought by different men, and the man in the white hat had to tear them apart. They maybe were brother or sister. I threw up, Addie, right there with all the men and ladies about. They stepped aside and put their handkerchief to their noses. I wanted to cry. I'm not what smells. Brother took us home, walked so fast, I knew he was mad. I want you to think for a minute. What do you think the author means when she says, "I'm not what smells"? Do you think she means the situation of buying and selling of people? She thinks that's a pretty stinky thing, doesn't she? He made me lie down to rest while he and Julia packed our bags. I heard him say, "I've seen all I need to see." We left. Then the sweet cedar smell still blowing in the wind, the sun like a warm hand, and Tabitha waved from the doorway and told me to wear my furs. Addie, I couldn't wear my lace collar. It felt so raw and ill. We came home to the white and the ice. Julia won't talk of what we saw, but Brother makes up for that. He's talking a lot about it. When you come in June, we will climb the apple tree to our perch, and I will tell you all that I saw. Addie, I can't get this out of my thoughts. If we slipped into black skin like a tight coat, everything would change. No one would call us by our last names, for we would not have them. Addie and Nettie we'd be, until we were worn out and died. When someone called, we'd jump. We could not read in the apple tree with the sun coming through the leaves, for no one would teach us to read, and no one would give us a book. And Addie, at any time we could be sold by a fat man in a white hat, in a tight white suit, and we'd have to go, just like that. Dear Addie, write soon. I miss you, and I have bad dreams at night. Love, Nettie. Do you suppose Nettie is thinking about the slaves and the way they were treated and the things that she saw? As a 10-year-old young girl, I'm sure those things haunted her. This story, I said, was historical, but the author, Anne Turner, she was the great-granddaughter of the real Nettie in the story. So this is called a memoir. So this is actually a nonfiction book because it is written from the diaries that she wrote about her trip. I hope you enjoyed the story. Look on Classroom and I'll have some things for you to respond to. Been great reading to you today. Bye.